Part 2. Sadhana Pada. Sadhana means practice. By the practice of yogic discipline, one is led towards spiritual illumination. A sadhaka is one who practices, applying his mind and intelligence with skill, dedication, and devotion. Samadhi Pada describes a certain level of sadhana for those of balanced mind and stable spiritual attainment. Nevertheless, Patanjali does not neglect beginners. In Sadhana Pada, they too are told how to begin their sadhana and work towards spiritual emancipation. Here, the art of practice, abhyasa, is fully laid out to uphold the sadhaka in uninterrupted maintenance of his sadhana, to guide him around pitfalls, so that he may gain great clarity by acute observation and reflection, and immaculate precision in practice. This development was outlined in Sutra 1.12, when Patanjali described Abhyasa and Vairagya as the twin uprights of the ladder of spiritual evolution. In Sutra 1.18, Patanjali hints how the aspirant who has reached a certain level of development but is doubtful about his further direction may reorient his sadhana from the very first sutra of this second pada. Sadhana Pada therefore carries the torch for both the spiritually evolved and the uninitiated. It teaches the complete beginner who knows no yoga how he may rise through his sadhana to the level of high aspirants. Sutra 2.1. Tappa Swadhyaya Ishvara Pranidhanani Kriya Yoga. Tappa means heat, burning, shining, ascetic devotion, a burning desire to reach perfection, that which burns all impurities, self-discipline. Swadhyaya means self-study, reflection of one's own self, understanding oneself from the outer sheath, the body, inwards towards the inner self. Ishvara means God, Lord of all. Pranidhanani means laying on, imposing, turning on, directing upon, profound religious meditation, or surrender. Kriya Yoga means yoga of action. Tappa Swadhyaya Ishvara Pranidhanani Kriya Yoga. Burning zeal in practice, self-study, and study of scriptures, and surrender to God are the acts of yoga. For Patanjali, the practice of yoga is the yoga of action, Kriya Yoga, composed of tapas, self-discipline, swadhyaya, self-study, and Ishvara Pranidhana, surrender to God. Tapas is the blazing desire to burn away the impurities of body, senses, and mind. Swadhyaya is the repetition of sacred mantras and the study of spiritual sacred texts in order to comprehend one's own self. Ishvara Pranidhana is surrender of one's body, mind, and soul to God through love for Him. Most commentators consider that this pada is intended for novices, and not for those who have already reached a high level of spiritual evolution. This is surely untrue, as sadhana is meant for both. The argument that it is only for those still roaming aimlessly in the world of pleasure does not take account of the fact that this wandering is merely a sign of a fluctuating consciousness which may remain a problem even for evolved souls. By following the precepts of Kriya Yoga, all aspirants may learn to live in unshakable serenity regardless of circumstances. From this pada onwards, both beginner and evolved soul learn how to stabilize the mind. Its instructions enable the evolved soul to progress more rapidly towards the goal of purity and emancipation. The disciplines of purifying man's three constituents, body, speech, and mind, constitute Kriya Yoga, the path to perfection. Our bodies are purified by self-discipline, or tapas. Our words by self-study, swadhyaya. And our minds by love and surrender to Him, Ishvara Pranidhana. This sutra represents the three great paths, karma, jnana, and bhakti. The path of action, that's karma marga, is the discipline tapas of body, senses, and mind. The path of knowledge, that's jnana marga, is the study of the self, or swadhyaya, from the skin to the core and back again. The path of love of God, that's bhakti marga, is surrender, or pranidhana, of all to God. Sadhana pada identifies the source of all these paths. The first represents life, the second, wisdom. The third, through the surrender of ego, brings the humility that leads to the effulgent, sorrowless light of Ishvara, God. Sutra 2.2 Samadhi bhavana artha klesha tanu karanartha. Samadhi means absorption, profound meditation. Bhavana means for bringing about. Artha means contemplating with meaning and feeling, for the purpose of. Klesha means afflictions. Tanu karanar means for the purpose of thinning, reducing, making slender, fine, weakening, attuning. Cha means and, both, as well as. Samadhi bhavana artha klesha tanu karanar tacha. The practice of yoga reduces afflictions and leads to samadhi. By reducing afflictions to a minimum or even eradicating them, Kriya Yoga promotes profound meditation, which is a precursor to samadhi. The purpose of this yoga is to minimize all impediments to meditation and thus bring the intelligence to full vibrant life. Sutra 2.3 Avidya asmita raga dvesa abhinivesha klesha. Avidya means lack of spiritual knowledge, spiritual ignorance. Asmita means ego, pride, I or me. Raga means desire, attachment, love, passion, affection, joy, pleasure, musical mode, order of sound. Dvesha means hate, dislike, abhorrence, enmity. Abhinivesha means love of life, fear of death, clinging to life, application, leaning towards attachment, intent, affection, devotion, determination, adherence, or tenacity. Klesha means affliction, pain, distress, sorrow, trouble. Avidya asmita raga dvesha abhinivesha klesha. The five afflictions which disturb the equilibrium of consciousness are ignorance or lack of wisdom, ego, pride of the ego or the sense of I, attachment to pleasure, aversion to pain, fear of death, and clinging to life. Afflictions are of three levels: intellectual, emotional, and instinctive. Avidya and asmita belong to the field of intelligence. Here lack of spiritual knowledge combined with pride and arrogance inflates the ego, causing conceit and the loss of one's sense of balance. Raga and dvesha belong to emotions and feelings. Raga is desire and attachment. Dvesha is hatred and aversion. Succumbing to excessive desires and attachments, or allowing oneself to be carried away by expressions of hatred, creates disharmony between body and mind, which may lead to psychosomatic disorders. Abhinivesha is instinctive, the desire to prolong one's life, and concern for one's own survival. Clinging to life makes one suspicious in dealings with others, and causes one to become selfish and self-centered. The root causes of these five afflictions are the behavioral functions and thoughts of the various spheres of the brain. Avidya and asmita are connected with the conscious front brain, and the top brain is considered the seat of the I consciousness. Raga and dvesha are connected with the base of the brain, the hypothalamus. Abhinivesha is connected with the old brain, or back brain, which is also known as the unconscious brain, as it retains past subliminal impressions, or samskaras. The sadhaka must learn to locate the sources of the afflictions in order to be able to nip them in the bud through his yogic principles and disciplines.